Hello, thank you for joining today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Matthew. Today we're going to be in chapter 2. We're going to look at verse 13 through 18. Go ahead and open up your Bibles and read those passages yourself so you can see what we're reading. Today we're going to start in verse 13, and there what we see is that the Magi have returned back home, but they've gone a different way. They haven't gone back to Herod. And so the angel now, knowing Herod's heart, comes back. The last time the angel came, he told Joseph to accept Mary as his wife. This time he says, get up, take the child and the mother, flee to Egypt, escape to Egypt, get out of here, wait there until I tell you. And we see this urgency and this command to Joseph to leave immediately. And Joseph does that. He's a very obedient person. He immediately gets up. He doesn't say, I'll wait till sunrise, or I'll wait till tomorrow, or after breakfast. He immediately gets up. He does exactly what he's told. He takes the child and the mother, and he flees. He escapes to Egypt, and he waits there until they come back. We had mentioned last time that the gifts of the Magi was a lot of money, really, worth a lot. And it's probably that wealth that was used by Joseph and Mary while they're in Egypt to live there. So they go down there, and we see Matthew give us this interesting quote. He says, out of Egypt I call my son. And we see that if we go to Hosea chapter 11, verse 1, we see that quote. But Hosea is not talking about the future Messiah. He's talking about the past Israel. And he's talking about how in the past, Israel had come out of Egypt into the promised land. And Matthew uses that quote to make a very important point. He uses that quote as fulfillment of what happened here when Jesus goes down to Egypt and then comes back into Israel afterwards, later. And what he's saying back there is that back when Hosea was saying this, it was about the exodus of the people out of the land of bondage into this promised land of prosperity. And Matthew's trying to point out here that with Jesus coming out of that land, it is a new exodus. It is a time where we are no longer going to be held in captivity by sin, but we are going to come out of that into a new promised land. So Matthew wants us to recognize that it comes not through Moses, but through this child, Jesus. So Jesus is going to be the new Moses. Then he continues on and he tells us about Herod. Herod now finds out that the Magi aren't coming back. And he says, I've been tricked. And it's really interesting because he wasn't tricked. Think about it. The Magi never expected to not go back to Herod. Their plan was to go down, worship the king, come back, tell the other king where they could find the newborn king. That was what they were going to do. But God changed their plan. So they weren't tricking Herod. They were honestly going to do exactly what Herod had asked, but God changed their plans. But isn't that funny that Herod, who was tricking the Magi, he sent them down there and said to come back so I can worship them when he really wanted to kill them. He thinks the Magi has tricked him. And that's a lesson for us, that sometimes we see in other people what we know about ourselves. And we have to be careful not to judge people by our own motives and our own actions. That's exactly what Herod's doing here. He thinks he's been tricked by the Magi, but he hasn't. God has changed their plan to take care of the child. Now he sent the child away. But meanwhile, Herod gets really angry. He's upset that he hasn't found out exactly where this child is, so he makes a new plan. The new plan is kill all the kids around there. So he goes ahead and he sends his troops down there to kill all the male children 2 years and under. And he gets that because that's when the Magi told them that the star first appeared. So the star first appeared about 2 years ago. He's going to kill all the male children 2 years and under. He's not going to take any chances. He's going to say, well, you were born just last month. Okay, you're okay, because I know the star was before you. He's going to just kill every child 2 years and under. And not just in Bethlehem, even though he knows that's where it's going to take place. He goes into the surrounding areas as well. Now, some people say, well, why don't we read about this in the history books? And it's a good point. Matthew's the only place we find out about this. However, remember, Herod's a horrible person. He's done some horrible things. This, as horrible as it is, doesn't compare to some of the really bad things he's done. And so historians might not decide to write about this, since in reality, it's a small thing compared to some of the really bad things Herod has done. But also, let's also know that Bethlehem at this time is not a major city. It's a small village. Some people say maybe 300 people live there. So it's not this big place. It's a small village. Some estimates, low estimates, are 6 to 7 children were killed. Some higher estimates say up to 20 children were killed. In either case, Matthew says that he goes back to Jeremiah 31 and he points to Jeremiah 31 and says it's like Rachel crying for her children, because of course we're hurt and angered and saddened by what Herod has done to our children. But the reason Matthew goes to that particular verse is not just to point out the mourning that's happening, because certainly there is, but he points out to Jeremiah 31 where Jeremiah speaks about the mourning of the mothers of the children who were killed by the Babylonians when the Babylonians came in and brought the Israelites into exile. So they were crying and weeping over their dead children. But Jeremiah's point is, but don't weep, don't worry, because there's coming a time where everything's going to flip, everything's going to change, and you will have joy because all will be right and all will be well. And Matthew wants us to catch that point, that though those children died, Jesus is alive. And he's going to come back and he's going to make everything right. And he's going to make everything good. And so that's the point that Matthew wants us to remember out of this. So with that, we're going to stop there. If you have any questions, thoughts, or comments, go ahead and put them in the comment section below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful day and God bless you.